Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Board of Education meeting this evening, and welcome to those who may be watching us online as well. Mr. Castater, can you give us, have the roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Gunther?
Present.
Mr. Beckman?
Here.
Mr. Kleinfelder?
Present.
Mrs. Webb?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Here. Everyone please stand and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Dr. Rice, can you take us through a view of the agenda, please?
Absolutely. After we approve the agenda and review and approve the correction of the minutes, we do have one item for board discussion this evening. That's continuing our process of working through policy. So we'll have 10 items of policy that we will review. Then we have two, I'm actually extremely excited for these presentations, the Facilities and Maintenance Department presentation, and then our Ross Local School District State Report Card presentation. Legislative report, Butler Tech report, public comments, and then superintendent's reports and recommendations, where we will take action on the previous 10 policies that we reviewed in August, and then look at some personnel hires in terms of science of reading, resignations, supplementals, and stipends, followed by, there's quite a few pages of those, followed by the treasurer's reports, and then we will go into executive session to review goals for treasurer and superintendent.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, we call the roll, please.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelder?
Aye. Yep.
Mr. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Gunther?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes. The agenda's approved. Let's move on to the minutes. You've had minutes for a while and a chance to look them over. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Okay, call the roll, please.
Yes. Mr. Kleinfelder?
Yes.
Mr. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Gunther?
Yes.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes. Okay, moving on to items for discussion. Dr. Rice.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Young. As I mentioned earlier, 10 items of policy for board discussion tonight. I've kind of grouped these in subject matter. These are continuing. This is going to be a common theme for a while as we catch up. These are coming from House Bill 33 last year that overhauled a lot of what we do in public ed. The first three policies that we will talk about are IGBEA, IGBEAR, and then IKE. These all revolve around the third grade reading guarantee, which no longer requires students to be retained. Now it adds a parent option in there to agree to promote the students who have not met the threshold. The caveat to that is that each student that has not met that threshold has to have high-frequency tutoring, high-dosage tutoring, so additional instruction, and they continue to be tested, continue to be monitored until they have met that reading threshold. And it kind of counts against us. We still have to report that data as they didn't meet the third grade reading guarantee, but they no longer are just arbitrarily held back. The next item I should ask, are there any questions about those three policies? Next two policies are IGCF and JEA. These deal with home education students. Remember last time we talked about the changes in homeschooling to now called home education students. These deal with compulsory attendance laws, which no longer apply for these students. So after the parent has filled out their one-page form saying they're going to homeschool, no longer a requirement to show us your curriculum, no longer a requirement to talk about attendance. The students, in my opinion, are completely off the books now and in the parents' hands. So those are those two policies. Any questions with those?
And parents can use that to dodge truancy, right?
Absolutely.
Pitiful.
In theory, they have to fill out the form within the first 14 days of the school year. I say in theory, because I'll believe it when I see it if the state were to say, if the state were to back us against a parent's rights to hold their kid home for home education.
Yeah.
So we do have that we could hold their feet to the fire on. But again, I think if it worked its way up, which just with the flavor of all these bills, the idea of giving the parents more rights, I'd be surprised if they didn't find in favor of the parent.
So, let's say they go on home instruction as a sophomore, return as a junior, and they don't provide any documentation of hours of instruction, credits earned.
They have to provide us something that shows what they've completed at home, but there's no like transcript, there's no curriculum that they have to approve. We can assess them to determine their proper placement. So if you have 2 years, essentially 2 years of a gap of instruction, we can give them a math assessment to determine should they be in geometry, algebra 2, those sorts of things. But we can't assess them and then award credit based on those 2 years at home.
That's something.
It's a mess.
House Bill 33. Next policy is IIA. This kind of continues on with that third grade reading guarantee. It's under that lens. This is all the science of reading that you may have heard about. This particular part of the law talks about that all curriculum must follow what the state has passed in terms of laws or guidance. So they're just telling you, essentially, if you're buying a curriculum, you better make sure it's state approved. It has to be. And that really hurt some districts who had just purchased English curriculums, ELA curriculums, and then science of reading comes out and it doesn't necessarily line up with the science of reading. Any questions on the IIA?
Yeah, Emily, I don't know if you know whether or not the reading program we were using, did it already qualify?
All three of the ones we're piloting are part of the approved curriculum.
Oh, so we're piloting now to make a selection?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And all of our intervention programs are also on that approved list. So we're not looking at anything off of that list.
Got it. Thank you.
Next policy is IL. This is kind of a silly one, honestly. Sets a date of June 30th for districts to report testing scores and results to parents. So just more bureaucracy of a date we have to follow. And that's zero issue for us. We do a fine job with that. Next two policies, JEC and JN. This deals with the collection of fees. Prior to this, districts could hold school records for fees to be paid in full. Now a district cannot hold school records for any fees owed that are under $2,500. So I'll give you, for instance, student transfers to another public education institute. The school requests the transcripts. We could hold those transcripts until their fees were paid. Now, these are not students that have qualified for free and reduced. That's different. Now we can't hold those transcripts unless it's over $2,500. So that's a big deal. And that number is really hard to get to for fees. We can still do things like districts do, not allowing folks to go to dances, hold those sorts of privileges, but in terms of educational records, we can no longer hold those. Let's hope that doesn't get out there. Any questions on JEC or JN? And the last two, or they're really one, EF and EFB, there's no longer such thing as free or reduced lunch. So if you qualify for free or reduced, it's free. So one little caveat I do want to talk about, I was in Columbus earlier this week, and we met with the House Minority Whip, and she was talking about, she believes the next biennial budget will include free breakfasts for all. They've pushed really, really hard to have free breakfast and lunch, but she thinks the first step is going to be free breakfasts for all. So thought that was probably a step in the right direction. You remember COVID, we gave lunches and breakfasts for everybody, and there was a big push after COVID to continue that because we know, even though we will advertise, we'll say, here's our percentage of students that qualify for free and reduced. We know that number is probably much higher than that because people, for a number of reasons, don't fill out the forms or fill them out incorrectly. We always have campaigns at the beginning of the year to get those forms filled out.
Can we opt out of the free breakfast?
I guess we'll have to wait and see what actually.
We can now, right?
And as a
can-
district, I don't know.
I
But
don't
we don't,
we qualify.
yeah, it's an individual that qualifies now.
Right.
We're not 100% like some of these,
Right.
there are
We're
districts
not
out there that are 100% free and reduced. We're not that.
So we're not serving breakfast at the middle school, is that right?
I don't think so. Yeah,
Okay.
I can follow up. Yeah.
When
not
does that,
that-
when does that go into effect?
Not that big a deal, and I thought the middle school qualified, but chose not to
There,
have
there's
free
nothing that's been
breakfast.
passed. This
Pardon?
was just a conversation that we were having with them.
Well, I'm
with-
talking about like the free and reduce, like there's no more, reduce.
We're already following it, even though the policy hasn't passed, because it's a
Okay,
federal
that's what I was
requirement.
wondering.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah. That's all I have for policies for this evening.
Okay, and we'll be voting on those next.
Yes, in the
Right.
October meeting, and again, I'll have 10 more additional that we'll review as well as we get caught up.
Just a note for anyone that's listening, the idea here is the district's behind in updating policies, and a lot of it's because a lot of policies required changing as a result of the change in the name of the Ohio Department of Education. That's part of it, but also policies just hadn't been kept up in terms of being revised. So we're tackling 10 at a time until we get caught up. So,
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll get there.
All right, we've got our Facilities and Maintenance Department presentation. Mr. Huff,
All right, thank you,
floor is
Mr.
yours.
Thank you, Mr. Young. My world does not exist in as much of the student stuff like what we talked about here with policy and things. But my world does definitely deal with a lot of budget stuff. So getting right into it, some of the goals for this presentation, I'm going to go over some of the safety stuff we've been doing for the past 2 years now, working through me and Mr. Castater. And I'm going to go over some of the big ticket items that we've been budgeting kind of over the past 5 years. The roof project at the high school, that was a great one. And then I'll talk about some of the contracts and things that we've been working on. And then something we kind of dove into last year with securing gas and electric rates through a company. So safety green items, we've finished up everything on the list. Security film on all the windows. That was a little bit taxing, but we got through that. Those flag style room numbers, actually those have been a hit. I think all the staff really likes those as far as students seeing their rooms. I mean, I caught myself doing it today. Like I get around to all the buildings every day, and there's times when I'm looking for a certain classroom and it just makes life easier. But definitely for first responders and everybody else, that was the true reason behind it, and those have worked out great. And we actually haven't had any issues with them, although the middle school thought they might. So. The physical security stuff, gates, pipe bollards, those are all the things you guys have seen. The boulders, in front of the RIS, all those things. I mean, we've had great luck with all that. No issues with installs. Nothing. You guys seen one of the gates we put up today? Got finished up. It's going to work out great. Cameras, we had some blind spots and things even after some of the initial cameras that we got. We've got a lot better exterior views now of the buildings. The principals love it. I mean, the features of the cameras they're loving. I mean, they're doing things now. They're figuring situations out so much quicker these days, and not having to waste time. So that's really worked out great. The exterior lighting, that was a big one. We still had some items from even when we did our energy stuff 2 years ago. That was some exterior lighting needs that we needed extra over at the bus lot, and then on top of the intermediate school that we updated. That's really helped out. And I mean, the drivers especially, their areas over there, they had a big blind spot on the back of that soccer field, and we added some poles back there, and they're very grateful for it. So it definitely helps them with their morning pre-trips, and they feel a lot more safe and secure in that lot. So that worked out great. And then we've got also some new operational functions we did with the with all the buildings actually. You know, now you can't just walk into the buildings and then you're in the vestibule area. You know, now we've got them set up to where you got to pretty much be buzzed in. We've got camera intercoms at every building that, you know, you got to use to even enter the building. There's no more just walking in and then talking to somebody. So that functionality has been working great. The secretaries and all the front office staff have been figuring that out really well, and I think everybody's liking that a lot. So,
Yeah, just to clarify, this was a safety grant that we applied for 2 years ago through the ODE and through the OFCC, and we were awarded $500,000, $100,000 for each building. That has to be spent over a 2-year period of time. We're coming up on the end of it. The end of this month is when all the invoices have to be paid and projects have to be completed. So all of these items that Mr. Huff is mentioning are things that came from that $500,000 grant that we were able to secure a couple years ago.
yeah, no out of pocket from us. This was 100% grant money, so this was great. I mean, really helped us get very caught up with the safety of our buildings for sure. So. Me and Steve worked through what's called a 5-year business operations plan. We've got a spreadsheet that was shared with everybody that we really worked through. It helps us budgeting, forecasting, everything. It's pretty comprehensive, but we mainly only use a handful of the items that are in it. And we've shared them with you guys, and that's pretty much our daily kind of go-to. Steve knows what my projects are. I know what my budgets are. It works out really great and gives us a great plan moving forward. So, I mean, even when we talk about new items, now we're able to see, forward even better, to have a better idea of kind of how it really is going to line out for our PI stuff. So, permanent improvement. So,
About how much are we spending each year on capital expenditure items, big ticket items?
Steve, do you know?
In the last couple years, we've been close to $2 million. That includes some carryover into this year. Right now, we're projecting about $3.4 million this year coming in through the PI fund, and that includes the taxes that feed that, as well as the contributions from like the insurance claim with the roof. So those things that's obviously a pass-through. We're getting the money in from the claim and then turning around and paying it out to the contractor doing that. But our PI fund has really been healthy over the last couple of years. So we have some money to work with now, which has been a good thing and allowed us to accomplish a lot of these big ticket items.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've been slowly playing some catch up ever since we got that straightened out, and it's been great. And this is one of them to really, highlight here, this roof project. We went down the path in March of kind of investigating, is this roof an insurance claim? And the more we dug into it, it absolutely was. And July, we received confirmation from, at the time, Liberty Mutual, and they said, they fully funded the project and gave us the approval to move forward. And LEI worked really hard on getting that done, and they knocked that project out in about 6 days work time. It was about a week and a half of actual time, but their crews were unreal, and they knocked this out. And this roof's great. We didn't really have any issues, and we got a great product out of it. And yeah, I can't say enough about it. So, I mean, anybody that was around seeing that was incredible. It was just so quick. So. With purchase services and contracts, last year we put out to bid some, earlier this year, we knew our vendor for, it's like rugs, uniforms, it was Cintas at the time, so kind of their vendorship, and UniFirst approached us about going out to bid. We reached out to some other companies but never got anything back, and we ended up going with UniFirst. The projected savings are somewhere in the $20,000 range. We're going to see how that shakes out. All these types of vendors, they've always got little nooks and crannies in them, but as far as their pricing for our everyday items that we use, it was a lot cheaper, and so far it's been a good experience. Also, we switched our HVAC contractors. I know last year I presented with some of you about we were taking that out to bid and switching. We did do that, and I'll show you on the last page. We ended up saving a lot of money. I'm running around a lot more doing things, but it's working out. But Peck Infant Briggs, they've been a great contractor working with us moving forward, and they've really stepped up. So, and also kind of one of the things I've been working with too is trying to get rid of, some excess items within these things like the UniFirst and Cintas contracts, like rugs. You wouldn't think about it, but rugs, they're hitting you for all the time. We're slowly getting rid of rugs, we're doing rugs in-house. Things like that, small items that you're not thinking of all the time. So we're working on cleaning up those kind of things. And then, with that, we're trying to make sure we're getting, good pricing with all this being said. So, and with that too, with the HVAC contracts, one of the things too was the services outside of the contract. We saved on that hourly rate from Johnson Controls to Peck Infant Briggs. It was a tremendous save. I couldn't tell you the exact number, but I want to say it went from 150 an hour down to 100 an hour. So any outside services, if they've got to come in and do a repair, it really benefited us switching. So, like I was telling you about the document, me and Steve, we work in that all the time, and this is kind of like a little breakdown of it, what we do, with the costs and everything. So we're always, trying to keep up and look for ways to save and keep up with contracts and different things. There's a tab in there where we actually kind of utilize to even keep up as far as the dates of a contract coming out. So we know ahead of time, like, all right, well, this is something we need to focus on, and go ahead, not just, next week that contract's, So that's really helped us to kind of keep an eye on those types of things. So, and we've noticed too, we've got a lot of multiple vendors, and that's just some practice that had happened over the years in the past. Certain buildings, like certain vendors, you'd have those things, but we've learned as we bring one vendor in and make it a larger kind of pool for them, we're getting better rates and we're getting better service. So we're really trying to knock that out. I shared this last year too a little bit. This was kind of the background to some of our energy stuff. I don't know if most people might not know, ELDA is completely supplied by Duke Energy. It's Duke Electric and Duke Gas. Now, all of our other buildings, they're intermediate school, middle school, high school, they're all Duke Gas, but Butler Rural Electric. Now, with that being said, Butler Rural doesn't fall into that program I was talking about earlier with locking in a rate. Butler Rural, if you notice down, is it on this page? Senate Bill 3, it gives us the right to choose suppliers, but with Butler Rural, they're exempt from that program. Those co-ops are exempt from that. Now, with Butler Rural, we do get a rebate check back from them. Last one we got was $42,000. We're expecting our next one any week now. We haven't got one this year, but they do give us kickback on that. It's a, I forget what they call that,
Credit.
it's like a benefits credit or a, yeah.
Capital credit.
Yeah, there you go. So, but anyways, so we were only allowed to apply this to any of the Duke rates, so the Duke Gas and Duke Electric. And I got a tab in here, I'll show you, where it really, we could do better if we weren't all Butler Rural, but you don't really have a choice in it. So you can see here on this one, this is the electric utilities. You can see $39.80, that is ELDA. ELDA, you can see we saved $1,700 in August, and then it goes down. So in that total for that year, we saved $15,000 was what our savings was. Well, that's one building. You could imagine what we could have saved if we would have been able to apply that to all buildings. Now they did tell us, Energy Alliances did tell us that our rate through Butler Rural is a great rate. So we're doing good already, but obviously we'd like to do better, but that's not how the bill works. So. And then same thing, that 2550 is actually, it's a trailer we actually house over at Queen of Peace for, is it reading? It's
Auxiliary.
It's auxiliary
Yeah.
for Queen of Peace. Not much, but it's still $562 a year we're saving now. So,
Okay, so Ross Township just passed
Aggregate.
gas and electric, right, aggregation
Aggregation.
in the township. Does that, can schools take advantage of that?
That's what we're in. We're in that program. I'm pretty sure it was Constellation that actually approached them, or was it Tim Abbott even? I believe I read up on that, and I think it was Tim with Energy Alliances, same company that actually approached us about that. We're already in this program. So that does not.
Well, you've locked in the
Right.
rate with this supplier, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what Ross Township was doing, is the same thing. That's what they were trying to provide for their citizens.
So is that gas or electric aggregation rate that's being offered through Ross Township better than what we already had in place with them?
I'd have to see the rate. You can see our rate over here on the side, that
What is
.062 is what our rate is, and then their current rate as of, I think this was last week, was .087. So we're doing better right
I'm
now.
trying to think what the Ross Township rate
I
is.
got
Is
the
it
letter.
.06?
I got the letter, but I don't remember. It might be.
I would look into that.
Yeah.
And see if already being involved with them, does that preclude us from being able to take advantage of the aggregation through Ross Township or not?
Yeah, I'll check and see.
Check on that.
Yeah,
if
I'll get you
would,
an answer on
and
that.
see where-
Absolutely, yeah.
Get us an answer on that if you would. and
Definitely, definitely.
See where we might be with that.
Was there a difference in the aggregation between residential versus business?
I believe when we looked in that, I don't think it did. I can't be 100%. I'll have to get you an answer on that. I do not think it did. I think pretty much Duke's rate was Duke's rate. I
Okay.
think everybody was pretty much, even,
Well, yeah, so Energy Alliance is a supplier, right? Duke-
Energy Alliances was a broker.
They're the broker.
They're the
yeah.
broker, correct. They're the broker that they went out and procured these rates for us through Constellation, did the gas.
Yeah, but isn't the rate only on supply, it's not on distribution, or am I wrong about that?
Correct,
You're correct about that.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Duke charges whatever they want to for the or whatever's been approved by PUCO, right?
Correct. Duke controls the pipes that
They
get it
control
all
the
here.
distribution, so this is
The-
all,
Our
has to
rate
do with
is
the
the gas,
supply.
is the physical
The supply,
volume.
right.
Correct. Same way with the electric I just showed you.
Yeah.
Lines and poles are Duke. PJM, I believe, is the
Yeah.
electrical supplier. And, no matter what, whether it's Butler Rural Duke, they're all
Right.
getting it, yeah.
Yeah, the
Well,
only
not the
thing we
same
have
place.
the ability to control is the supply itself.
correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
As we all found out this
So ju-
morning.
just
Duke-
check if you would
Duke
on that.
controls a large majority of our electric.
Yeah, just check on that aggregation and see
Yeah.
that, if you would, and see how that might, whether we have any opportunity for that,
Absolutely.
and what it might, how it will compare to this
To the rate
current.
that we already have.
We're probably locked into this for several years, aren't
It
we?
was a 3-year. We've only got 2 years left.
Okay, so,
We did it because we felt like, depending on, the way politics went or anything, the rates they're gonna fluctuate. We want to be able to take advantage of that
yeah.
as quickly as
And when we
possible.
did this, the aggregation wasn't offered
Correct.
either, so,
Yeah.
Right.
so 2 more years. But you might just check and see whether we can
That
even.
rate's pretty low, according to the Ohio Department of Energy. The lowest rate, there's 36.
Hold on, let
different
me go back. Where you
rates
at,
in
gas
this
or
county.
electric? This is the electric.
Electric.
This is our electric rate right now.
And the cheapest is 5.9, and the highest is 11.4.
Yeah.
There's 36,
So we're on the
most
low
of them in the 7 and 8 range, so 6 is probably pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Great,
Township rate is .5894
Okay.
.58
for
So
gas.
a little bit lower than that.
for gas.
For gas?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're at .53.
Okay,
That's what we're locked at for the next 3 years.
got it, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And again, you can see the gas savings wasn't quite there. We only saved overall with all the buildings that have Duke gas, about $465, but at least it's a savings,
Yeah,
we could have been, currently they're at .57 right now, so
yeah.
it ain't much.
Thank you, Mr. Nierhelm.
Vista project, I don't know that we've talked much about it. The project kind of as it went in place in 2020, they helped us with a lot of items. windows, upgrading, getting us started with upgrading some of our HVAC controls.
LED lighting.
LED lighting. They did a lot of our lighting project, other than the high school. The high school was already done. That was kind of us dipping our feet in that. But they did a great job, and we're actually talking with them again on a second phase to the project. But I just wanted to kind of show everybody, here's what and this is really hard to kind of see on this, but
Is this House Bill 264?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what they did, you know, they were projecting a certain savings on a lot of these items, and I'll show you on the next page here. But we actually overshot a lot of it. We saved, we're saving actually a lot more than what they even projected. And actually, a talk we had with Doug today is a lot of times that's actually what happens with these projects. They can only show you kind of an estimated savings of the way that they're kind of. He said it was like a formula the state uses for it. It's really soft, but you know, if you really utilize the items correctly and do the right things, you can save a lot more, and we've really done that.
They probably have to do like a conservative approach to
It is
to
a
the
very
savings.
conservative approach, yes.
So the deal is the state gives us money to do this, and then as sort of a loan, and then we pay the loan back. Is that the way it works?
Correct.
Through the savings supposedly?
Right.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, and the loan is at an extremely low interest rate. It's currently a 0.25 is the interest rate that you get on the loan. So but the idea is you save at least enough money to pay the payment back on the loan. And in this case, you can see the way these numbers have played out, we've actually saved a little bit more than what we've paid on the loan payments.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, even without the energy savings, inflation alone, we beat we're beating the rate. So, you know, we couldn't. I mean, it was a great win for the district. 100%. We got some things caught up and some things done that were in dire need for sure. So, this right here. So here we go. So, the HVAC contract, we went from it was like a $70-something thousand contract down to 35. You know, with a $41,000 savings. Last year we estimated we were only going to probably save about 30. We weren't exactly sure where the numbers would come back, but we're saving really good on that. The energy contracts, like I showed you, we only saved about 16,000. You know, due to it only being one building, but it's 16,000. I believe we spend over $500,000 in energy, and you know, I mean, if you really look at that, it's not that big, but every bit helps at that point, especially now with this Vista project. You know, going down that path, we've showed that we've saved this is over about 3 years' time, $170,000 in savings is what they just reported to the state in their, what was that document they shared? They got like a document they have to share with the state that proves savings, so.
How many years after that project do they have to continue to report to the state?
It's, throughout the life of the loan. It's a 15-year.
Okay, so 10 or
We set up as a
15, whatever
15-year
the,
payback. So
Gotcha.
throughout the life of the loan, they'll continue to report those.
41,954 is almost enough for another teacher. Right? That's the way you got to look at it.
That's true. That's true. But no, we've done great. I mean, that's, you know, we're saving, we're doing really good things, saving a lot of money, and I think we're definitely doing the right things, helping us with energy, keeping these buildings in great shape. I can't say enough. So, anybody got any questions?
All right. I got a few. Do we have a current roof map, like a bird's eye view of all the roofs and roof sections of all of our buildings and the year that?
Actually, I'm getting an updated one currently, because that's what we're talking about with Vista, is kind of updating as far as getting a better roof plan. We have a roof plan, but they want to update it again now that we've
When
done.
was the last time it was done?
Let's see, I had one done in 2019, I want to say. It was right before COVID.
I mean, it'd be nice if you could look like Elda, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got so many different roofs that were done at different times.
Yes.
We know
Section.
what year each section was done. So
I
we got an
do
idea.
have that information, yes.
Yeah, so we got an idea.
Yes.
Of what's going to need replaced and when, and that's all calculated into your business plan.
Correct. Yeah, and that's part, yeah, me and Steve, you know,
So I assume the idea is every year we're gonna do some section of roof somewhere.
we did a section on the middle school last year. We're planning on doing a section on Elda this year,
Yeah,
so.
good.
Hoping for a big insurance claim, hailstorm.
Just, this doesn't have anything to do, I think, with this, but I just had a question. Given the drought conditions we've got, the district used to own 3 water reels that operated off the wells and underground wells. I haven't seen those operating for several years. Where are those?
Stored in the garage over at the middle school.
Why aren't we using them to water our fields?
We don't have a need to water our fields right now. We have nobody was requesting that the fields are in need of any type of irrigation. Baseball's irrigating off their system, but other than that, nobody else has been requesting us to irrigate.
Does Little Pro still have a field here that they practice and play on? Practice.
They
Use-
practice
use
on,
football.
they use the
Yeah.
turf.
Yeah,
And
use
so
turf
what
for games.
happens is when that grass dries out, okay, and then you get on it with cleats, when it's dried out like that, it just tears the grass off right at the ground, and you end up losing grass. That's why it's important to keep that dirt, to keep it softened up. And, so you're telling me that all the football teams and all of the soccer teams are all practicing on the current turf?
Yeah, they have a schedule. Mr. Beck's got a schedule. I
All
thought
football
that
are not practicing on the turf. They're all game competitions are on the turf, but practices are not necessarily on the turf.
okay, not all the time, that's
Yeah,
correct.
not all the
Yeah.
time. Mm.
But they do try and work together on practicing out there, that's true.
Well, I just, to me, it doesn't make sense. I mean, all we're paying for is electric to operate the pump, to pump the water out of that well that's in the ground. We're not paying for the water at all. So I'm not sure why we wouldn't utilize that, because it would make them safer conditions for anybody that is practicing on those fields. And the Little Pro is not playing all their games on the or the turf field, are they?
Yes.
I thought they were limited to so many games a year.
No, because we tried, there's something about this Saturday's game, and all their games are on the turf, because we were trying to get a JV game in there. All their games for us, when we host, are on the turf.
I'd like to look back at the original agreement, because I thought the original agreement was they could have so many games on that turf.
There's been a
each
new
year.
agreement since the turf.
Yeah.
I do know
I
that.
have not seen them play a single game
Yeah.
off
Well,
the turf.
when the turf was put in,
Yeah,
there was an agreement that they paid a little bit towards that turf, correct? And there was agreement at that time that they would be allowed to use it so many times a year. I'm pretty sure. I don't think it was for every single time.
Well, they have,
had home
yeah,
games.
I mean, their home games, they're using the turf. I mean, they have away games as well.
Well, I know that, but I'm just saying for the home games, they're not practicing on the turf.
no.
No.
No, so, I mean, it just seems like we ought to be utilizing those water reels, to me. Just my opinion. Anyhow, let's take a look at that, if we
Okay.
could. Question about air conditioning in the summer, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have, there used to be a setback mode. I know here at the high school for sure it was called out of session. And when you put it on out of session,
We currently utilize that in the summers with the new
it
controls
closes all of
program.
the fresh air intakes because
Mhm.
you have so few people in the building. You don't need all that fresh air coming in.
We do that, and we actually turn up all the temperatures. Now, when the custodians will work in a certain space or area, obviously they'll turn it down for where
Right.
they're working.
To
But
help
as far
drive.
as that, yeah, the buildings, we set them all back.
Okay. Well, for the last, since the intermediate school's been open, those window air conditioning units are going hard and heavy all year long, every day.
No, we had a big issue this summer where we made sure that our custodians were shutting them off because they would come in or leave one on
All I
or,
can tell you is that every time I visit the pantry, those units are going constantly all summer long. I took video of them, the water dripping out of them, and they were never turned off as far as I never saw them not running. And I'm just curious about, it just seemed odd to me that for the last several summers that's been happening. why would they be on, really at all, for that matter? I mean, you don't have to air condition rooms in the summer if nobody's in them.
Well, correct, unless they're working in them, like I said.
Okay, just something,
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to see if we were looking at that at all, the air conditioning, because that's a big cost in the summer,
Correct.
air conditioned things. So something to look at, I think. In the summer cleaning, I had a question about, we approved this huge list of people for overtime, I mean, for substitute custodians in the summer. And we were told that very few of those would ever get used. Do you have any idea how much those people actually, we ended up actually paying people?
We ended up spending, I think, around 18,000. That was our budgetary number we knew going in. And with that, our goal with that was to make sure that everything, with the short summer, we just wanted to make sure everything got done. We pretty much only utilized those people for the month of June. So we got a lot of work done in the month of June, and then was able to turn those people loose and utilize our staff to finish the rest of it. And we got very, very caught up.
Where are we with allowing overtime with our maintenance staff?
The only overtime that staff gets is if there's a event or something extra that happens on a weekend. Other than that, we don't have any overtime necessities.
Okay, great. Okay. Sorry for all the questions, but
No, those are good. All good questions.
thanks.
So, anybody else? All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you
Yep.
very much.
Nope, no
Appreciate
problem.
all your hard work on trying to make things run as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, it is a full time.
Well, we got to focus our dollars on teaching and learning, so we want to make sure we're doing everything else as efficiently as possible. All right, and now we're going to be hearing about our state report card.
Yep.
Haven't used up all your time, so hurry up. Okay, wait for it to warm up again.
Thank you.
I knew who it was, that's fine, I just want to see the topic.
Good evening. What you have in front of you is a couple of documents that I thought were really important for the presentation on our school report card. So the first page is just a breakdown of all of the components of the state report card as it is now. So there's been a lot of changes over the last couple of years. You'll notice that the report card is not just based on achievement, but there are 6 different components, 5 of which are rated. 1 additional component will be rated this year that hasn't been in the past. And so this just talks you through what each of those components mean. All of the documents behind that are what Mr. Young likes to call the Christmas tree reports. And so those reports are just where we as a district in each of our school buildings stand comparable to other similar districts in our area. Anything in green means something that we've done better than. Anything in gray is equal to what we are performing at, and anything in red is where we are performing lower than that school district or school. So as an overview, as I said, there are many measures that are part of this report card. So you have achievement, progress. We now have early literacy, which actually has 3 measures as a part of it. The college and career workforce is a report only. That is what will go into effect this school year. Our graduation component measures our 4 and our 5-year graduation rate, and then gap closing has 6 different measures as a part of it.
Are you gonna talk about this later? Okay.
So this is just a different breakdown. Our overall rating, we can earn half stars. In all of the components, however, we can only earn full stars. So as our overall rating, you'll notice that there are schools that are ranked 4.5 and 3.5 as an overall rating. However, for each of those components, you get full stars for those. So we're very excited to let you all know that we are, again, a 5-star district. Very proud of all of that work that has been put into that. And so lots of schools were celebrating last Friday when this came out, and we're super excited. Here is our district report card, so our overall rating of 5. That means that we are significantly exceeding state standards as a school district. You'll notice the breakdown in achievement, progress, gap closing, graduation, and early literacy. This, again, is our district. So for everything that we talk about today, it'll be based on Ross Local Schools. You are able to go into the state report card and look at each school individually and how each school scored, but that is also broken down in those documents that you have in front of you.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
that? And I noticed a lot of districts that were like 4.5 stars that had a lot of 5 stars in some of these other areas. So, like, to get a 5-star overall rating, do they say like you have to have 5 stars in 3 of those 5 areas?
It's-
Or how do they figure that out?
So it would be great if it was that easy. Each component actually has its own calculation and weight. And so I have another slide for each of the components that talks about how those stars are divvied out that
Okay.
we can talk about.
So like early literacy might count more than some of the others, for example?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
And gap closing, as I said, gap closing has 6 different measures that it's taking into account to get to that 5-star designation. This is just a deeper look at how each of those components are broken down, and we'll go into each of those components here. Before we do that, though, I wanted to share, in Ohio, only 11% of school districts were rated a 5-star, and Ross was one of them. So we are part of the top 11% of school districts in the entire state. We are the only 5-star district in Butler County, and Ross Local Schools was in the top 25% of school districts in Hamilton, Butler, and Warren County based on overall performance. Yeah. Out of the 40 districts that I pulled in,
Give it the old Trump.
I know. Out of the 40 districts in Butler, Hamilton, and Warren County, this is kind of where we ranked. So we were 1 out of 10 schools that earned a 5-star rating. We were 10th in overall performance, 12th in achievement, 10th in value added, 4th in early literacy, 8th in gap closing, 4th in 4-year graduation rate, and 10th in the college career workforce military readiness, which isn't even rated yet. So without it even being rated, we're already performing at a high level in that component.
That one's not easy.
So to look at achievement is based on how students perform on state assessments. So this is how our students, when they take the state assessment, mainly, most of them are taking them in the spring. However, at the high school, we have a fall session of testing and a spring session of testing due to the block. But this is how it is weighted. So for every level that they perform at the state or on the state assessments, you get a different weight. And so everything proficient and above is a bonus, so that is something positive toward this score. And you'll notice that basic and limited and untested actually hurt our score. And so our goal is for all of our students to be scoring proficient or higher on those state assessments. Now, there are a lot of factors that go into this. We have students, obviously, that come to us on all levels of proficiency. So we have students who come to us who are below grade level. We have students who come to us who are gifted. And so it's our job to educate every student that walks in the door. And so part of what we look at is what does the state project that those students will be able to perform at, and then trying to make sure that we get them to that performance level. The next component we talk about is progress, which actually talks about how we close those gaps. So even if we don't get students to proficient and they score basic, if they went from limited to basic, that creates a bump for us in our PI each year. So even if we're not able to get them to that proficiency level due to circumstances out of our control or due to situations where students are just not at the place where they need to be, we are able to earn points by growing them more each year. And so we are sitting at a 4-star achievement rate right now, which means we are exceeding state standards. One area, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but one area where I've been talking a lot with principals on how we can increase our PI is through Advanced Plus. And I put a note on your sheet to let you know the reason our Advanced Plus numbers are lower is because Advanced Plus can only be achieved if a student is on a written acceleration plan. So what that means is that if a student is performing higher than grade level and we feel like they can achieve at the next grade level, either a subject or full grade acceleration, we'll put them on a written acceleration plan. That's how we earn those points. Right now, we currently do not have practices in our gifted model that really pushes acceleration, but it's something that we're talking about, especially in the areas of math where we have students who are achieving at the 96th percentile and could benefit from possibly doing upper level math versus what their grade level math is. So it's definitely a conversation that we're having. The progress component is what I talked about in terms of growth. And so what we're looking at here is that there is a very complicated formula that we are always trying to figure out how the state comes up with it that addresses how students grow over time. And so schools are measured on the progress component based on 3 years of data. And so one thing with RIS didn't have 3 years of data until this school year. And so they've always kind of been knocked in progress because they didn't have enough data to support getting rated highly. What we saw this year is that they actually earned 5 stars in progress because of that 3 years worth of data and showing that they are growing kids, not just the 1 year's growth, but they're actually growing kids even beyond 1 year's growth and hitting that progress component. Value-added data is very important to look at in terms of how they estimate students should perform on assessments, and then how our teachers have trended in growing kids over time. That data is not available until mid to late October, and so once that data comes out, then the building administrators and I'll kind of review over it, talk through just the different components of that and how we can utilize that data to dig into student progress a little more.
How do they define the growth expectation? I mean,
That's
as
a-
you start
That's a
getting
great
higher, it's a little
question.
smaller, or-
So the hardest part is really growing our highest achieving kids. So if our kids are achieving already at the highest kind of point that they should be, or even above what they should be for their grade level, they tend to be the hardest ones to grow because they don't have as far to go. And so the formula is based on how they've performed over time on their state assessments and what is predictive based on, again, a very complicated formula that very few people can figure out to determine how they determine that. But it really is looking at how are students performing over time, what is they estimated to perform this year to show a year's worth of growth, and did they hit that mark?
When the state determines the growth, when the state determines kind of the benchmark, is the benchmark something that they just set out, or is the benchmark based on all of the schools like in the state of Ohio? How is that determined?
It's kind of a combination of both. So it's
Okay.
how students have performed based on the baseline that is like the average that the state puts out each year. And so like that's part of it too. So like that kind of goal fluctuates every year. And so it's kind of a moving target as well.
No, thank you.
Like I said, it's very complicated,
Yeah.
and we try to do our very best with the data that we get to be as predictive as possible, knowing that it is really hard to explain and understand. So just trying to use it to the best of our ability.
So is it fair to say seventh grade language arts exceeded student growth by a large magnitude? So that puts a pressure on the eighth grade teachers, right?
Correct.
For
Yep.
that growth component?
Yes.
Because what is expected of the eighth grade students is based on how they did in seventh grade language arts.
Correct.
Is that fair to say?
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty simplified, but, so,
Yes. So if you see blue, that next year it's a little bit more challenging because we've already surpassed the growth that they were supposed to make, and now we're expecting that same amount of growth the next year
yeah.
when some of those kids may not have that much more to grow.
So fifth grade language arts, we only met student growth expectations. So it seems like in sixth grade, we shouldn't be falling short because it was
Correct.
just met.
For next year, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
so that's an area to look at.
Correct.
I'm guessing.
It's actually already an area we are looking at. So there you go.
I
Look at
mean,
you.
I know that's kind of obvious, but yeah.
And Mr. Saylor and I have been talking about ELA just in general at the middle school and how we can kind of look at what interventions to put in place as well to help students grow more. And so you'll see this a little more, but that's part of our 3-year goal as well as ELA.
So English 2 in high school
Mhm.
fell short of growth expectations. What was that based on, the growth expectation?
So it's, again, based on how students have performed on all of their state tests up to that point.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right,
So we're looking at that.
yeah, all right, just curious.
Yep.
Because
There's no 9th grade test,
Yes,
but there is an 8th
right,
grade test and
yeah,
7th grade. So
yeah.
it's how they're performing over time and what the expectation is, whether they've met that growth or
Yeah,
not.
Yeah, got it.
And this is what's really challenging is because we have very high achieving kids at Ross. And so when we have very high achieving students, that room for growth shrinks a little bit. And so that's part of the work that we have to figure out is how do we still learn to grow those kids to make sure that we're meeting this progress measure.
Yep.
And you may be getting to this later, but how do we trend in the areas that we struggle? How do we trend with other districts in that same area or grade level?
So that's part of the breakdown
all within
here.
here?
It's all
Okay.
in here and how we're trending with especially with other high schools. Brian actually broke down on the second chart where there's some blue. That's the high school breakdown that Brian did, and you can see based on ELA, math, all of the state assessments, how we're doing compared to all of those districts.
Okay.
Our high schools, like local high schools.
And the test changes every year, so.
It does.
You know, that could have an impact on how kids do too. But if you see everybody in the state is down in a particular area, then you say, okay, well, the test obviously was harder.
And just one test in particular this year where the state dropped significantly was 8th grade ELA. So 8th grade ELA dropped 10 percentage points on that state assessment in terms of proficiency. Our 8th grade only dropped 8, however, it still dropped, but we dropped less than the state dropped, but it's something to keep in mind. So we do look at trends over time. So if it's an anomaly year where like that is 49% proficient is an anomaly for sure in terms of the state, then we'll look at it again next year and we look at the year prior to see where it was to understand those trends and make sure that we're not making drastic changes for something that was assessment-based
Good
in that
point.
year.
Excellent. Yeah, good
And
point.
part
Well,
of that-
At some point, like, you can't keep going up and up and up forever.
Correct.
I
Yes.
mean,
No, Wyoming
start
did-
out as a 300 hitter in
Wyoming
baseball, you're
Wyoming
not gonna
City
be a
does it.
900 hitter by the time you get to the majors. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just-
you're
at
right,
some
though.
point,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard.
you know.
Well, and part of it too is like, especially in achievement, that denominator for PI, how they determine PI, I'll go back so you guys can see this, but the performance index PI, like the not 109.3% changes every year, and it's based on the top 20% of schools' performance in the state to determine that denominator. So our denominator last year was 108.7. So our target is always changing. So we still improved, our performance index percentage still improved, but the denominator was actually higher, which makes it harder to improve.
So that's one where they benchmark against other districts
that is
versus
the
just
one where-
setting up,
Yep.
hey, you need to get
Yep.
this.
Yep. So there's no set bottom denominator that you're trying to hit. It
It
fluctuates.
truly is a benchmark with all your peers.
Yep, yep. Yeah. So gap closing is an area where we earned 5 stars as a district. So where you see red dots, that's the state expectation. And so obviously you can see in our PI for our subgroups as a district, we are exceeding state expectation for achievement. So getting our students in those subgroups to perform on those state assessments at or above those proficiency levels. Where we have some areas, this is again where you're going to see growth. So if you can look at the ELA growth, the goal for this to be able to meet your points is that you are exceeding 2 years worth of growth or 2 measures worth of growth. So you'll see that 2 is the red line. In math, we are doing that for our subgroups. In ELA, we are hitting that for our economically disadvantaged students. However, we're not hitting that for our students with disabilities subgroup, and so it's something that we're looking at moving forward as well.
So those subgroups would be socioeconomically disadvantaged?
Yep, economic disadvantage. We hit the criteria for Hispanic, multiracial, and for students with disabilities. In terms of graduation rates for our subgroups, we are meeting that mark and exceeding it. We currently do not have enough EL learners in our district for that portion to count as part of our report card. So it's growing, however.
But they're being tested though, right?
They are being tested, but in terms of it counting on our report card, it's not a subgroup that gets calculated in gap closing.
And how close are we to that?
So right now, I think we have 24 students, and I think it's a 15% to get to the subgroup, 15% of our total population. So we have a little, but it's growing astronomically in other districts, and I don't want to discount the fact that we need to still support those students. As a district, our chronic absenteeism dropped this year. So as a district, that's something to be really proud of. We have more students coming to school. And so one thing that we're continuing to look at is House Bill 410 obviously puts plans in place when kids hit thresholds. What can we do to be proactive so that those students are not even hitting those thresholds? And so it's engaging in those conversations. It's making school a place where kids want to be. So engaging in some of those fun things that bring kids to want to be at school. All of those pieces play a role in chronic absenteeism. Also, I think partnering with parents, making sure that parents truly understand what those thresholds mean. And, you know, I'm sure that the high school has driven to houses to pick up kids, even to get them to come to school at this point. So we're doing everything in our power to get kids to school and make sure that this is a place that they want to come to. In terms of gifted, you'll notice that as a district, we met our value added, which means that we are continuing to grow our students who are gifted. Where we did not meet is the performance index. I will let you know that denominator has also increased to 97.5% of our students scoring proficient or higher, actually scoring accelerated or advanced plus on those state assessments. Even though the state standard is 97.5% of those students, we were at 95.7%. So we're right there. We're very close. What I'm working on right now is actually identifying our students who, on their state assessment, who are gifted, who fell below those thresholds, to be able to see what's going on with them. I will tell you that there was a point in time through MAP where we identified several students who maybe weren't necessarily gifted based on the standards that MAP put out. However, once identified, we cannot unidentified gifted students. So those students are likely not hitting that threshold currently to maintain gifted status, but we're still treating them as gifted students and trying to get them in those gifted courses and push them to meet those standards.
Are these students gifted only in math and language arts, or
Nope.
is a student who's gifted in
Superior COG, so that
superior COG? Okay, what about
creative thinking,
creative thinking?
performing and visual arts,
Oh, boy.
reading, math, science.
Okay.
Emily,
So,
do they
yes.
still
So the
identify?
creative and performing arts, they're thrown into this gifted category.
They
too.
are. We, as a district, do not identify many students in the visual and performing arts because the criteria to do that, the rubrics and the actual identification process is massive, and we don't have people trained to do it. Once we identify them, we have no way of servicing them.
Right.
And so it has always been a mindset, at least since I've been here, that we don't just identify kids to identify them. If we can't serve students in gifted courses, in higher level courses, then it doesn't benefit us just to identify them. That is not a practice that we have ever wanted to do just to meet a mark. It doesn't feel genuine to do that. But yes, we have students in all of those areas currently that we are working with.
Do we still just identify students in second grade and second grade only?
Second and fourth, we
Okay.
can also identify through their progress on MAP. And so every time a student takes MAP, our MAP assessment, which is our benchmark that we take 3 times a year, if they hit a certain threshold, they can be identified and get a WEP. Yep. And a WEP is a written education plan, which just talks about the fact that your student performed at an above higher rate than their peers, met a threshold, and they will have specific goals to meet in order to maintain that gifted status. Our early literacy component, we are doing a great job in early literacy. So we are looking at, how many of our students. Tracy is doing a great job. All of our teachers are doing an incredible job with early literacy. One of the components with early literacy is we measure how how students are reading when they come into kindergarten. And so that component actually plays a huge role in early literacy. And we take a look at, are they on track or off track? And so through our kindergarten diagnostic, we identify those kids as they enter into school, whether they are meeting or whether they are on track to meet that 3rd grade guarantee or whether they are off track. We are also held to a standard that if we bypass 10% of our kindergartners being off track, then we have an additional component within early literacy that we have to meet on the state report card. Just so you guys are aware, we are tracking this right now, and we have 11% of our kindergartners this year who are off track. And so it is likely that next school year on our report card, we will have to meet that additional component of getting those students on track, just so you guys are aware of that. Graduation, we are at a 5-star for our 4-year and 5-year combined graduation. Ross High School does a great job making sure as many students as possible graduate. You'll see our percentages there. So we not only track our students who graduate on that traditional pathway of 4 years, but even our kiddos who who were not able to graduate after 4 years, but if they graduated after that 5th year, that's also an additional component that they measure at the state level. College, career, workforce, and military readiness. This is the component that is not yet a part of our report card, but will be. This looks at how we prepare our students for life after high school, ensuring that they are prepared and ready to move into whatever area that they choose once graduating. The stars are the areas that they're really looking at right now in terms of how they would track that. One of the areas that we are looking at as a high school is work-based learning. So getting more of our students internships, getting them into the workforce, being able to co-op junior and senior year so that they are getting those work hours. Another thing that our counselors have instituted this year is that every high schooler that graduates from Ross High School will have the Ohio Means Job Readiness seal on their graduation diploma. There's a rubric and there's many components that that are a part of that seal. So not only will that help them with graduation, but if over those 4 years they get 250 work-based learning hours, they also get a credential, which means that they are proving to other employers that they are ready for the workforce. And that credential is pretty important for some of our kiddos who may not be on track to go to college and want to enter the workforce after graduation.
Are we still required to give, is it the PSAT to all juniors?
We are still required to give the ACT.
ACT,
However, parents
okay.
can opt out of the ACT now for their students. That is a new part of the law.
Okay.
But yes,
And
it's
that-
still state funded and we still do it.
Okay, every student.
Every student.
And I bet there's some that are really motivated to do well on that, right?
Well, you know.
It doesn't say score, it says participation.
Participation. Remediation free is an area where we do get scored. So if they take it remediation free and score a certain threshold, then we get points for that.
Okay.
And is it like SAT and ACT, is that equal, or we don't know how that's calculated?
It's equal.
because
So we
don't-
choose as a district which one we're going to take.
Oh.
Ohio tends to be more of an ACT
Right, all right.
state, and so that's what we've
So to
opted
get a
to
good
do.
score on this, we don't have to have every single one of those
Nope.
levels.
No,
All right.
no.
Good point.
And I mean, this is what we would spend all of our time at the high school doing if we were trying to get everything. So our goal is just to put systems in place that meet kids where they are. We know what their graduation plan is after graduation, and we're able to help support them in that plan. So every year the state puts out our comparable districts. It changes every year, so you should know that some of these districts may not have been comparable in the past, but they are this year. And so this is the data of those comparable districts throughout the entire state of Ohio. The only, so you can see New Richmond is on there from Claremont County, and you can see Valley View from Montgomery County and Southwest Local. Those are the only ones that are districts around, oh, Brookville is on there as well, sorry.
I just want to say, I think it's really important to look at the similar district data because these are districts that the state's determined are districts that have similar demographics as us. And that demographics includes, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it includes things like the percent of parents that have college educations in your district and things like that. So it includes resources available. So, you know, what kind of resources do you have coming into the district in terms of financing and those things, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's I think good data. I mean, comparing us to Butler County, okay, that's fine, you know, and for us it's been a little bit of bragging rights certainly, but this is really good because it shows here's districts, similar students, similar communities, similar resources, and how are we stacking up?
Yep. And based on our overall rating, we are second in that group of 10.
Yeah. It's good.
So I just want to share some incredible news. Elda and Morgan and Ross Intermediate all scored 5 stars on their report card. And so you can see that as you move behind those first 2 documents, you will see RMS, RIS, and Elda and Morgan. So all of their data is on there for you. Ross Middle School and Ross High School both scored 4.5 stars on their state report card. Some news that I shared with all of our principals on Friday, Madeira, Marymount, Wyoming, and Ross are the only districts in Hamilton, Butler, and Warren County where all of their schools were 4.5 or higher. And so that's
No
very,
Indian Hill in there?
nope. Indian Hill had some 4-star schools.
They're not even in the top 10. In the Enquirer, they weren't in the top 10 school. I was surprised by that. I wonder if they're struggling with the progress piece of that. I don't know.
You can pull their data and see if you want.
I do know
They're
this,
spending
that,
about $24,000 a student too.
well, yeah, but I know that they have had a negative attitude about the whole state testing thing, and that, from top down, they just say, screw it, we don't care. I think that's unfortunately been a attitude that's been prevalent in the district. And, I think it'll hurt them in the long run by having that attitude.
So we have a lot to celebrate as a district, and so I just want to share this slide with you. Overall, as a district, we saw improvement in our achievement from last year to this year, even with the increase in the denominator, which I think is really awesome. We improved in 10 of the 20 performance indicators, percent of students that were proficient or higher. That's across every state test. So when you think of third grade reading, third grade math, fourth grade reading, so we improved in 10 of those 20 assessments that our students took. Our district chronic absenteeism dropped. Our 4- and 5-year graduation rates both improved. Our district gifted PI improved. Elda and Morgan maintained their 5-star status. Ross Intermediate went from 4.5 stars to 5 stars. A lot of that having to do with that progress measure that they now have data to support. Elda, Morgan, and Riss are the highest performing schools in all of the schools in Butler County. So out of 84 schools, they are ranked 1, 2, and 3. Ross Middle School went from 4 stars to 4.5 stars, and it is the highest performing junior high and middle school in Butler County. And Ross High School has the highest performance index in Butler County. And out of all of the high schools in the state of Ohio, we are 139 out of 771. So obviously, even with all the celebration, there are areas of improvement that we are working on. Gap closing is one of those areas. So not only are we looking at our subgroups, but we're really looking at that gifted piece as well. So all of that is a part of our gifted measure. Early literacy, again, for the past few years, our kindergartners have entered with 90% or higher, assessing on track. Right now, we are at 89% on track. So this will open that improving K-3 literacy measure that has not impacted us in the past. And so we're monitoring that, and we're looking at ways to ensure growth in that area. And then obviously we want to see 5 stars across the board. So we're looking at ways to increase our achievement and our progress from 4 stars to 5 stars. A couple of ways that we're doing this is right now we're in a K-5 pilot to adopt high quality instructional materials for ELA. We're also working with the middle school and high school to implement common assessments within the state testing platform. So we can actually author assessments from released questions on the state assessment and use that as data to gauge how our students are performing throughout the year. So when they go to take that state assessment in the spring, we have a good indication of how they're going to perform well before they actually take that test. It was a huge benefit coming in this year because we were actually in the process of rewriting our 3-year goals. And so by getting this job, I was able to work this summer with a great team of people to identify our areas where we really want to focus our attention over the next 3 years. So I thought it was really important to share those goals with you. We want to improve our English language arts across all of our grade levels to achieve a rating of 5 stars for every grade level at Ross Local Schools. And so we are tracking PI for just ELA to make sure that we are getting to that 5-star mark, specifically in ELA. One of the biggest things and most exciting, I would say, work that we're doing right now is really building out our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports for our MTSS system. So right now we're in the process of looking at what is our common curriculum across for every student. And then what we'll start to look at is how do we provide intervention for those students who need more than just the common, and then what do we do for those students who even need more than that. And so we're breaking these systems down. We're working across all 5 buildings on this structure, and we're going to do an audit in year 1 of all of our systems to create a systemic process for identifying students and being able to track what intervention they need and whether that intervention is successful for them. And then for our students with disabilities, we noticed that that was a subgroup that we're not really achieving the level that we want to with them. And so part of building in our tier 2 and tier 3 supports is also looking at how they're performing on the state report card and the special ed report card to make sure we're targeting those specific areas to improve their progress and growth. Do you guys have any questions at this point? I have one more slide, but yeah.
Oh, no,
ahead.
go ahead. I can wait till the end.
It's a little bit different than what I've presented, so go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just curious, now that we have a few years of data
Yeah.
since we've opened the RIS building, I was curious how that, if we have any quantitative data that we can say, yes, it's been a success, no, it hasn't. I'm kind of feeling like it has been a success.
Yeah, so I would say their state report card based on just last year to this year has shown huge strides in the work that they're doing. And so when you dig into their being able to push progress and being able to close gaps, when you look at their achievement rating, like they're having huge success there. And their data is proving that they're having huge success. So their intervention models even, we're starting to track intervention models. So as RIMPs, so that's reading improvement plans for any kiddo who didn't pass the 3rd grade test. They're placed on a specific plan, and we have to track their progress to get them to pass the state report card. We have intervention models in place right now to be able to track how those students are doing. So yes, we have different systems of data. I'm meeting regularly with Jason and Callie as well to build out even more systemic processes. I think by having a 4 or 5 ELA program, that too will provide us with a lot of data. So now we're going to have even more rich data around how our ELA is operating within that building. And so, yes.
Now, did we notice a drop in our middle school scores when we opened RIS and pulled 5th grade out?
No.
Or
So
did we actually see a bump in 5th grade progress?
So I can share all that data with you. I have it over time. So I've been tracking it, or I have data to track since 2020, and there hasn't been a significant change in the middle school by pulling them out. One thing to think about, and one thing I continually talk with Chris about, is as we start to talk through like written acceleration plans, if our 8th grade students are taking algebra at the high school, those students don't count for our middle school math scores. And so that's something that we have to consider. I know it's not fair, but it's part of what it happens.
I thought they would have changed that.
It doesn't. So, but again, I think our goal is always to do what's best for the kid. And so like, we have to really look at, do we keep kids in 8th grade so they get us a good score? Or do we look at really pushing a cohort of kids to the level of math potentially that they need? And so, but that'll have better effects on our 7th and 6th grade scores for the middle school. And so those are all conversations we have. And we're kind of weighing,
So it
the
sounds
pros
like
and cons.
overall, there has not been a negative effect.
No, I
as
don't.
far
I
as
have
that
not.
academic
I have not
speaking.
seen a negative effect.
No,
That's great.
I think it's a great question. It's one of the questions that I asked, and I think you look at the 2 elementaries are both 5-star. The middle school is raised a 0.5 star. RIS is a 5-star. I think when you narrow grade bands like we have, pulling 5th grade, pushing 4th grade, it's allowing those buildings to concentrate where they need to concentrate, right? So the elementaries focusing on 3rd grade. RIS, focusing on 4th and 5th, this narrow grade band. Middle school, knowing that 5th graders probably aren't mature enough yet for middle school, focusing where they need to focus. I think rather than a dip, I think we're seeing the benefits of that narrowed, focused approach for those buildings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think it's been great too, because Chris really looked at like who in his building, who was teaching what, and made some shifts this year to address some of those areas of like maybe this isn't working out. And so I'm really intrigued to see what happens with that too. So all of our building principals are also digging deep into their data too and tracking all of that. But I think just simply even moving from 4 stars to 4.5 stars at that middle school level, it's showing that things are working.
Significant
Yeah,
improvement.
yeah, definitely.
All right.
I have one more slide.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right, ed choice. So I know you want to talk a little bit
You know
about
I
this.
had to, right?
Yeah.
So I think everyone knows how I feel about the Ed Choice voucher system. This is the first time I've seen this on the report card. I didn't even know it was actually coming until the day that I logged on and looked at the report card. So this shows our Ed Choice voucher students. And I think it is very telling of what's happening across the state of Ohio. When you look at 2023 data, and then you look at 2024, if you didn't know any better, you would say, wait a minute, we had less than 20 kids that were participating in the Ed Choice voucher system to now to over 220. Wait a minute, we lost 200 students that have taken this voucher and left our schools to go to a private or parochial? No, we have not. And Ms. Doblinger can speak specifically on the number. What that means is the state of Ohio, over the last biennial budget, removed the income requirement for the Ed Choice voucher. So that 220 represents students that have always been in parochial schools that now are eligible for that scholarship amount that's on the bottom. So that is not representative of students who have made the decision over the last year to leave Ross schools. That is representative of, in my opinion, Bill Rice's opinion, a direct funding shift that the state of Ohio is doing, where they are taking public taxpayer dollars and funneling them into parochial private institutions who, oh, by the way, don't have a state report card, don't have state testings, have eligibility requirements for who gets in and who gets out. We are blessed every day to teach all students in public ed. That is a blessing. That is a blessing that we get to teach the EL students. That is a blessing that we get to teach the IEP students. We open the door and let them come in. It is apples and oranges, and I'm on a soapbox right now, but the general public needs to understand that, look at the scholarship amount. Almost $6,200 for kids K to 8 and $8,400 grades 9 through 12. And it is a funding shift. It's literally money that just doesn't come to us anymore based on those students, and in some of these cases have went their entire career, but were not eligible because of the income requirement. The politicians will tell you it's about lifting those folks up that can't get out of those situations and bringing them into a school that's successful. Well, if that's the case, why aren't we seeing an influx from those failing schools? We're not. It's a funding shift. So again, that's my soapbox. I thought it was just enlightening that this was on the report card because I didn't know it was coming, and I about fell out of my chair because I would have thought they would have tried to bury that number.
If you put a dollar amount on that, taking an average, saying half of them are 912 and half of them are K6, that's $1.6 million in funding
Per year
That we're losing.
per year.
that we've now essentially lost in the
I mean,
2024.
that's significant.
Yeah. So just to give you a little, even just to dig a little deeper into the data, I actually polled all of our students since 2020 that withdrew from Ross to go to private school. And our total from 2020 till today has been 60 students. So not even close to the 222. So
That's
just,
just eligible, right? 222, that's not all that are receiving.
No, that's.
no,
That's receiving.
that's
That's
receiving.
receiving.
That's receiving.
That is receiving.
It's money that
Yes.
we previously received
'Cause I know,
that we
have
are not.
Yes.
Kids on my street that attend Baden, but
Yes.
I don't believe they're getting a choice, but maybe they are.
Yeah, I
So-
got friends, if you go into
But they are.
open house, they got
Yeah.
applications
Yes.
on the
Yeah.
table.
Yes.
Have you applied for your Ed Choice scholarship?
Wow.
And the premise for what it was started was if you are a failing school, a failing public school, we will give you a scholarship to attend a private school because your school is failing. Our schools are not failing.
Right.
And yet 222
Yeah.
of our students are
Yeah.
scholarship-based in a private
Until they got
institution.
their foot in the door.
Right.
So-
If you look at the schools in the statewide that have seen the highest percentage increases in the students that are receiving the vouchers, it's Mason,
Oak
it's
Hills.
Springboro. Like, it's high-achieving school districts like us, where people are just taking the money they've always gone to private school. And now they're just filling out the form to get the voucher to be able to help pay for it.
Do they
So-
still get John Peters scholarship?
We still do John Peterson, and we still do autism.
That's what the JPSN
um,
is.
Okay.
That's the John
as well.
Peterson.
All right.
So 23, we had 17. What would I don't want to say realistic, but without the voucher system set up the way it is, what would that 222 look like? Would it be very similar to that 17?
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, just as another tidbit of data that I pulled, we had the biggest influx of students leave us in 2022. So, and it was about 20 of our students left us to go to private school. Last year, we had 5. So I know based on history and things that have been happening, we had the immense pay to play, we had levy failures, and so in 22 it made sense that we had a higher number of families who opted to go to a different school system, but last year we had 5. And so even those numbers just, it just doesn't make sense. So.
We just, in public ed, we have to be talking about this
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
being done behind closed doors. And there's a lawsuit that's supposed to be heard this fall that talks about the separation of church and state and should public dollars be used for these things. I won't get into all that. I just think there's a lot of literature out there that public schools in the state of Ohio are going to be running more levies now because of this direct funding shift, when you're talking about that much money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's my
You're welcome.
soapbox.
Is that it?
Do you have questions?
I have no question, but I have a big comment.
Okay.
That was an impressive presentation.
Yes.
Highly impressive, and I want to say that I think if I was a teacher and you and Tracy were running the show in curriculum, I would have a lot of confidence in you and what you're doing. Certainly being the curriculum director, I think, is one of the hardest roles in a school district, because quite often you are asking staff members to take a look at what you're doing and let's evaluate it and let's see if maybe we could do things differently. And, you know, a lot of people don't want to go to that work or, you know, think that everything's okay. So, great presentation, appreciate the work. I think I can speak, I think, safely for the board. There's a lot of confidence in what's happening in the curriculum department right now, and I'm sure our staff feels that too. Thank you very much. And I think a big thank you to our entire staff for those fabulous
Oh my gosh.
results. I mean, that's impressive. I hope our staff members know how much they're appreciated. And I see things only continuing to be good and get even better with our current staff and leadership. So, thank you. All right, we're moving on to, do we have any legislative report?
No, I mean, they're entering lame duck, but one thing that came up the other day in my role, this applies for teachers and teacher licensure, is Senate Bill 168. There's several changes in that, but one of them that we're trying to decipher and figure out is for teachers that go for those continuing education units and licensure renewals, the trainings that we have to do on a regular yearly basis, like the Public School Works training, for example, that they're only going to be able to count during one licensure cycle. So if, you go to apply for your license every 5 years, so you can only count. So like right now, like where I work, it's like, I think we can only give like 0.5, and that goes into effect in October. So that's one of those things, like if you did your Public School Works training right now, like submit it. There's still discussion going on, but that's just something that's, I've come across and wanted to put that out there for people.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Butler Tech report, Mr. Kleinfelder?
Yeah, had their meeting Tuesday. I gave all the board members and treasurer and superintendent cards inviting the groundbreakings at both the Bioscience Center out on 75 and then Middleton Aviation Center. If you want to show up, email Jess Friedhoff, and it's on the card. She'll take care of. Kind of in the same venue, Butler Tech talked about some of their enrollment numbers for this year. This year they had 3,041 applicants for DRL programs, and that's an increase of 7%. They did increase the numbers of students at DRL by about 100, but You figure in there also accepted 125 sophomores in their sophomore-only program. And the thing is, they talked about giving those sophomores some priority for the next, to be a junior-senior program. And if that trend continues, you're gonna have students that'll almost, if they wanna be in a competitive program like welding or precision machining or something that nature, you're gonna have to apply as a sophomore. And that's kind of honking off some of the public high school principals that, you know, you're taking kids earlier and earlier. And, you know, we saw the dollars that went away with the Ed Choice, but you also got to realize those dollars are going away with FTEs. Last year, Ross gave Butler Tech 126.53 full-time equivalents in the programs here and our kids living there. Butler Tech's serving about 18,164 students across Butler County and some of Hamilton County. So they're drawing a lot of money in FTEs, and you got to think that that's, you know, I've always said we need probably a study of, is that, how much are those programs costing us? I know the startup of a lab is tremendously expensive, but, you know, it's dollars that we're losing at a time when, you know, times are getting tough. In a cost-saving major, you're not going to get a hard copy of the colorful 4 or 5 page student success program. That's now been emailed to everyone. And if you're not getting a copy, let me know, and I'll get that fixed up for you. Adult Ed, they served over 20,000 people last year. A lot of that was driver's ed, CDL testing, like 7,000, which they got qualified for. 460 some people took the motorcycle thing. I drove by there the other day and I thought, man, there's all these motorcycles on a Saturday, and it was people getting their license. But that's a lot of students when all of their programs are under a year. They're in, you know, they're constantly cycling through healthcare, HVAC, and so forth, and they're getting them through there and burning and churning. And that program, when I first got on the Butler Tech board, the whole adult ed was on the chopping block because it wasn't making any money. And then with the change in director and some advertising and so forth, and some of the things they've done, they've kind of brought that out of the doldrums, and it's actually producing some income for them. So, and also this coming year, later this year, it's going to be the 50th anniversary of DRL's opening. So now, 50th anniversary of Butler Tech, I'm sure it'll be a shindig of some type. More information to follow. And they also talked about, they installed an east-west firewall that monitors all their internal traffic and so forth, so they're protecting themselves from, you know, kid's got a virus on his computer, it's not spreading. So it's totally behind SWOCA's firewall, but I thought that was an interesting concept. I don't know if we have a problem with that or have had issues, but seemed like that's something that probably, I don't know how expensive it is, but that seems like a good idea.
So, Mr. Kleinfelder, I know the last couple of years, for admissions, they've been using a lottery system. Please tell me they've decided not to do that anymore.
Still doing it.
Still doing it. Still doing it.
And
Great Oaks is doing it, Warren County.
regardless of,
It's public school.
Public.
is there a minimum
They are not doing
requirement you have to meet to get into lottery, or?
Not allowed to put any requirements in there.
I don't think they have any minimum
Yeah.
requirement.
I just don't get it.
It's terrible. I don't,
They review transcripts after kids are accepted, and they'll see if they're credit deficient, but if they're credit deficient, then they have to either do remediation or they can't go.
Boy, gutless.
I mean, it's turning into a public-private.
Yeah,
I mean,
all right. Thank you for your report, and now we get to public comment. Mr. Nieder-Hellman, you had a note that you wanted to address the board regarding athletic boosters?
Yes.
We'll give you about 3 minutes, maybe 5, to tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, so I'm Lynn Hellman, I'm the Vice President of the Athletic Boosters, and I just wanted to inform the school board that we will have some VIP guests coming on the homecoming game. We applied for the B105 Friday Night Fights event, so we'll have 2 of the radio hosts join us in the concession stand. We posted it on social media, so it got a lot of traction. So I didn't know if any of the board had heard about it, but just FYI, we have those guests coming here in a few weeks. Earlier,
Is the stat man coming?
they had to change, so now we have Jesse.
Oh, he's a former student of mine.
Yeah, Big Dave and Statman, they have to switch.
Oh.
But I know they want to get an audio file sent out to the different schools to kind of hype them up for homecoming, hear the radio voices in different school buildings. And then, there's like a few other things, but they'll, call me, we'll do a brief interview for the radio, so they'll broadcast it the week of the event on October 4th. Again, they'll be here. We wanted them for Cowdom, and they could join us for our fundraiser, but scheduling purposes, homecoming was the game to go. And then, the reason I bring that also up, I was cleaning out the concession, re-cleaning, painting the interior. You've been huge help with the boosters. But so just another, I guess, thing to put out there. I don't know if there's any other, plans from the administration or the board to improve the concession stand that is over there. It's about 30 years old, approaching next year. And so we didn't know what the process was for maybe the boosters to apply for grants or look for ways to improve this on school properties. We don't know if there's different restrictions on getting bids or how to expand our storage there while also servicing now the complex house out the turf field that boosters help with, and then same with the new track. So there's a lot of traction going through that place, and we just want to make sure that we keep up with the volume that we're getting through.
Thank you, and it sounded like all pretty good news. I would encourage you to just work through with Dr. Rice in terms of anything relative to the facility and Mr. Huff, and they could probably give you some guidance perhaps on that. So I know those cabinets that are in there now were cabinets that were taken out of the high school when it was renovated back in like the late 1980s or early 90s.
Before I was here. I know that.
Yeah, early 1990s, so they're pretty old. They're probably falling apart, aren't they?
They hit with our golf cart, people that can't drive. That's the problem.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, and we appreciate your efforts with the athletic boosters very much. And
Maybe Chelsea.
it's really, you know, we got a big upgrade with the turf field out there, but the press box concession stand are definitely 2 facilities that could use some upgrading, no doubt about it. Okay. Now, we're on to Dr. Rice.
Yes, I have 2 items. First item is A, the policies as read and discussed at the August board meeting, up for board action.
Good. So those policies we've already looked at. We're ready to approve those. Do we have a motion to approve
Motion to
those
approve.
policies?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Yes. Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelder?
Yes.
Mr. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Gunther?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes. Motion passes.
Under letter B, I have personnel support staff. Number 1 is our resignations. Number 2, employment. Number 3, supplementals and stipends. Those are winter coaching requisites or recommendations. Club sponsors and building leadership positions. And then number 4, science of reading stipends. This is due to the passage of House Bill 33 last year. Teachers and administrators are required to participate in PD for the science of reading. These stipends are attached to the PD for teaching staff only. Districts are reimbursed, they're made whole by the state for these stipends. The list of teachers and those who have already completed the PD are what is on today, and I would say with certainty we will see more of those in the coming months as they complete that professional development requirement. All of these positions are no new positions added.
Okay, great. We have a motion to approve the personnel items.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion, second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, call the roll, please.
Mr. Gunther?
Yes.
Mr. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelder?
Yes.
Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes. Thank you. Treasurer's report?
Yep, I have 6 items, letters A through F. 3 of them are normal monthly things we see on the agenda with a donation, and then our investment and treasurer's reports. We also have a career and technical education resolution that we're required to pass every year and send on to the state. And then our permanent appropriations. So back in June, we did temporary appropriations, which was kind of our get off the ground budget for the year. Now that we're a couple months into the fiscal year, we're able to drill that down a little bit and see our budget, our expenses, where we're going to allocate our money for this year. So that is our permanent appropriations that we'll send to the County Budget Commission after they're approved. And along with that, letter F is our amended certificate, which is essentially the opposite side of the appropriation. So the appropriation is the money we're going to spend. The amended certificate of estimated resources is this is what we believe we're going to bring in over the course of the year from taxes, from state funding, from school fees, all of those areas that we see revenue coming in. So those two things kind of married together. So letters A through F together for one vote.
Steve, I have a quick question about the career tech waiver. So we do have a career tech program at the middle school, but does it not meet?
It doesn't meet the state standard.
Standard?
We're only
Okay.
teaching it to one grade level.
Gotcha,
So
because it's
this
not
is-
offered to 7th, it's just
Correct.
8th grade.
Right.
Okay, understood.
This is the waiver that we have to file with the state since we're not offering, and it may even be, the standard might even be more than just one program is offered, so either way, even with it being offered, if it was offered to both grade levels, we would still have to do the waiver.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I will say to those who are here that the board gets these items to look over several days prior to the board meeting. So we've been able to look them over. Obviously, Mrs. Webb had a question, but it's not like we're just blindly approving things. You know, we have an opportunity to look them over and make sure we're okay with everything. Okay, call the roll, please.
Yes. Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelder?
Yes.
Mr. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Gunther?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes. Okay, the motion is approved. Okay, anything board committee reports at all?
We did have a brief facilities meeting yesterday. We did talk about some of what Mr. Huff was talking about with Vista Consulting. We're looking to try to maybe potentially capitalize on that 0.25% interest for different projects that we are planning for down the road. But if we're able to kind of get together a list of those projects, see if we can get them approved by Vista Consulting through the state of Ohio, we may have an opportunity to get some of those projects done and spread that payment out over time. So again, there would be some more lighting, some HVAC, roofing, some different things that are going to be kind of continued maintenance, or in this case, it might be deferred over a few years that we're looking to, again, looking into it, nothing permanent yet.
What's the
but
time period on those that you have to complete the projects? Do you have, do it in 2 years? Did I hear you say that?
Well,
The projects have to be done in 2 years?
that was with the safety grant, the projects.
Oh,
We
that
had
was
2
the safety
years.
grant.
Yeah, with Vista, it's not with Vista, but with House Bill 264, it's typically a 15-year payback is what
Yeah.
they look at. So it's kind of just piecing together the different things you're interested in having be a
Yeah,
part of the
but
program.
do you have to complete them?
Within a time frame?
Yeah,
Is that what you're getting at?
yes,
I wanna
I
say-
don't remember that being the case the last time.
Right.
okay,
I'm sure there's a time frame,
yeah,
but I'm sure it's pretty open.
okay,
We can look at that.
just curious.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Other than Vista Consulting, we talked about some of the transportation issues we've had, trying to figure out a solution there, so,
Construction.
yeah.
Well, we've had, unfortunately, some bus
Yes.
accidents,
Mhm.
minor accidents, no kids involved, but
Right.
hopefully that's over.
Yeah. We've had a couple buses that are going down and
Yes.
some different things like
Yeah.
that, so.
Okay, anything else?
That was pretty much it.
Any other committee reports? Okay. We are going to be going into executive session. We'll come out of executive session and adjourn. There will be no action to follow the executive session. We're merely going to be starting the goal-setting process for the superintendent and treasurer, so we'll be discussing that with them. And so do we have a motion to move to executive session?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Yes. Mrs. Webb?
Yes.
Mr. Kleinfelder?
Yes.
Mr. Beckman?
Yes.
Mr. Gunther?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes. Okay, thank you all very much for being here. It was a great meeting.